Antagonists. They play a pivotal role in any story, being the other side of the coin for your protagonists. As a challenge to overcome, clashing with them in physical and emotional ways, they are just as important to the story as the main character is. And in BLUELOCK's case, there have been many players to rival Isagi Yoichi. Itoshi Rin, Michael Kaiser, and Julian Loki come to mind, but I would argue none quite narratively reached the newly introduced antagonist, Hugo. Within just 10 chapters of the France game, Hugo has completely flipped Isagi upside down, making him question everything he believes in, and split the BLUELOCK team into two. He's threatening, he has the skills to back it up, and with this much of an impact in such a short amount of time, that's exactly why I want to dive further into Hugo and his character. Because it goes beyond his philosophy of second best. It was a matter of a perfectly timed arrival for both the story and the community, addressing flaws that have never been talked about before, all the while being one of the best players we've seen in BLUELOCK. So let's start with the main reason why Hugo is the perfect antagonist for the current story, and of course it all starts with his sort of rivalry with Isagi Yoichi. Now I say sort of because it's not really a rivalry, it's more of just Hugo telling Isagi about his flaws, and that he'd be a better player if he'd followed his theory of suitability. I'm sure we already know it by now, but Hugo's theory is that people should stick to what they're good at and be realistic with their dreams. Due to that theory, he thinks Isagi would be better off chasing to be the number 2 as a midfielder just like him, instead of chasing to be the best striker. The mentality itself is one thing, but immediately, Hugo is the first character in the series to actively call out Isagi and his position, even calling him below average at some times, which is low-key harsh. Hugo has been passive-aggressive ever since his introduction, but it's a perspective BLUELOCK has never addressed in the story. Think about it, no other character has really challenged Isagi's position. Kaiser calls him a striker. BLUELOCK was about creating the perfect striker, but Hugo is the first one to point it out, besides a few negligible interviews. And as an antagonist, he's not a direct rival to Isagi like many of the other characters in BLUELOCK. He's not Julian Loki just being an unsurpassable wall of talent. He's not Kaiser where he's villainous trying to crush Isagi's pride, and he's not competing for the same goal as him like Itoshi Rin. Hugo is different because he is an agent of change, challenging Isagi's beliefs more than his skills. And it's not like I'm saying the other rivals are bad. Hugo's character is just a breath of fresh air compared to others, which I think many people like about him. And that just barely touches the tip of the iceberg of why he's so great. Because what Hugo is preaching, some people in the community may actually agree with him and his mentality. Playing to your strengths is arguably one of the best ways to make it far in life, and that's what Hugo is preaching. He's also addressing the elephant in the room, readers saying that Isagi is better as a midfielder, so he's almost like a catalyst for the community to rally behind if they believe in the same thing. Whether you think Isagi is a striker or not, it's hard to deny that his skill set is more suitable towards a midfielder than a striker. He does better in building up a play and positioning, rather than having an insane weapon made entirely for scoring. He still scores goals at the end of the day, which I think matters the most, but purely from a striker sense, Kaneshiro hasn't really shown us a good path towards Isagi becoming the best in favor of the other strikers we've seen. To give an example, take any of the NEL teams centered around one striker, Barcha with Bachara, Ubers with barou, and PXG with Rin and Cheeto. Just imagine if you replaced any of them with Isagi, it would be more of a downgrade than an upgrade. Hence why everyone thinks he's a lesser striker, not a bad striker, but just a downgrade. And again, that's not saying that he would be bad or that he wouldn't score. I'm sure he'd find his way working around with these different teams and their different systems, but the point still stands. I mentioned it earlier, but the community has been on Isagi constantly, calling him a midfielder or Cam Soggy, mid Soggy. Now again, this has never been brought up in the story of BLUELOCK so far, even though everyone debates about it in the community outside of the story, so that's why it was a huge thing for Hugo to finally bring it up, because it already existed. There was Isagi haters versus the Isagi fans. And when you're able to create an antagonist where the viewers can sympathize, justify, and even understand the point they're trying to convey, you've already made a great antagonist. And not only does Hugo have the viewers convinced, he even managed to convince the BLUELOCKers too. That's why we saw Karasu so adamant on switching to the number 2 spot. That is some Aizen levels of manipulation, and that caused a rift between Karasu and Isagi, especially because the number 2 mentality worked for Karasu. Karasu managed to actually make a play for Blue Lock using Hugo's mentality, all the while Isagi was being ineffective with the Blue Lock one, yet he had the audacity to say that Karasu is wrong. So it just gives further proof that maybe Hugo is onto something with his mentality. It also makes Isagi look kind of dumb because he's saying Karasu shouldn't do this even though he's ineffective. And it just doesn't stop because his recent goal also gives him more backing and evidence for why his philosophy is good or better than Isagi's. Because he's beating our number 1 player at his own game, pointing out the flaws and making him ineffective, all the while preaching about his philosophy and how good it is, and then scoring a goal because of it. It literally checks off all the boxes for a perfect antagonist, especially because the way he goes about it. Hugo gives Isagi a choice, except being a mediocre striker and Blue Lock loses, or become an even better midfielder and give Blue Lock a chance. Honestly though, as much as Hugo makes sense to a certain capacity, as much as you can agree with him, his mentality also has flaws, which I think makes him even better. Now, every mentality has its pros and cons, of course, but these flaws add more layers to Hugo's character, because it builds anticipation for us viewers to see how Isagi will overcome this obstacle and find out what the flaws are in the mentality. And when you create a character that gets you so engaged, it's just hard to beat. It's damn near perfect writing. I know everyone is reading week to week, just hype for the next chapter. Unless you're an Isagi hater, you want to see Isagi prove Hugo wrong, or find a way to overcome this obstacle. It builds expectations, it builds anticipation, and gets us engaged with it. Kaneshiro has now set the writing up where Hugo has the community backing him. So when eventually Isagi figures out Hugo defeating the antagonist, it also answers to that side of the community that believe the same thing as Hugo, that Isagi is more suitable towards a midfielder. So he's hitting 2 birds with 1 stone, giving Isagi his evolution and also the community more backing for why Isagi will become the number 1 striker, which we already addressed earlier. Kaneshiro hasn't done a good job of convincing us yet, so it makes a lot of sense. And as much as Hugo has flaws in the philosophy, I will 100% point out that Ego has flaws in his philosophy too. He's contradicted himself. I'm not going to be biased strictly towards Ego and Isagi. If anything, Ego shouldn't be mad at Karasu for helping support and create the number 1. Just like how Hugo is doing that for Loki, if Ego's objective is simply to create the best striker, then Karasu helping out wouldn't be a problem, because that would be one less person pursuing it. Other Blue Lockers could evolve, just like how Kunigami was used to help evolve others. So it kind of feels like Ego is just pushing his own ideal that everyone needs to chase it in order to create it, not him simply wanting the result. Like Ego has said, everyone should be a striker, which isn't too realistic. Some people have settled into their positions, like Gagamaru will always be a goalkeeper, so it's kind of contradictory in that sense. I do think when Ego says strive to be a striker, it's more of a mentality thing, like chasing to be the protagonist or best in the world, just like the World Cup training showed. But there are so many different interpretations of it that it will have to be discussed in another video, but end of the day, they both have their flaws. That being said though, I do think Ego is justifiable in why he did all of this. His ideal has taken them so far in the first place. He used to be a pro player and a rival of the best player in the world, so I assume he knows what he's talking about. He even acknowledges Karasu's play and gave backing for his philosophy in the most recent chapter. He acknowledges that they are weak. He wants them to live for that one chance, even if it seems improbable, because you have to put up a fight even if the chances are slim. Ego is basically saying, because we ain't built for this, we have to take the unrealistic approach. And of course, that is a hard pill to swallow. When you go for something so unrealistic, it's inherently going to be flawed. Take into account there is a lot of Jinpachi Ego hate going on, and Hugo is the only one to call out his methods as brainwashing. Then people who dislike Ego will also like Hugo. There are both right and wrongs in their mentalities, and that makes the division between both sides even greater. Which is why I personally think Isagi is gonna make his own philosophy towards the end of this game or arc. I've explained it in a few theory videos by now, but to recap it in a nutshell, Isagi has previously said he needs to make a new theory to beat Noel Noah, Ego's football isn't enough for him anymore, and Isagi is the most hybrid player of the egoist and number 2 mentality. So combining of both mentalities, although hard, it's something Isagi's character would perfectly align with. And I think there's substantial evidence pointing towards him creating his own philosophy, like him saying saying all of those things about Noel, Noah, and Ego. It does kind of feel weird because why is Isagi not using the blue lock philosophy that's been here since the start of the manga? The whole manga is about it, but it's not him getting rid of it, it's him balancing between both. But I really do think that's gonna be Isagi's answer to Hugo, because we know he wants to surpass him and prove him wrong. Because you have to remember this, Isagi evolves others for the sake of his evolution. Hugo evolves others for the sake of his fascination. Obviously, Hugo is still a good player. I mean, he literally scored a goal and has the new gen title for a reason, and he's outclassing Isagi in every which way, but maybe this is something that Isagi exploits. Isagi constantly grows because he's chasing that one chance Ego was talking about. He evolves others and evolves because of it, but since Hugo is still in the same place, maybe he gets outgrown by Isagi. I know it's hard to believe at the moment because Hugo is dominating Isagi. Isagi even acknowledges he's better in every way too, and that's why it makes it all the more exciting for what's to come. The fact that Kaneshiro has built up such a good antagonist in just a few chapters, challenging the blue lock philosophy, Isagi and Karasu's beliefs, splitting the community as well, he's genuinely one of the best antagonists we've gotten so far. I would argue he is the perfect antagonist for the story at the current moment, because in order to progress in the story, Kaneshiro does need to address Isagi's suitability towards the midfielder position and create an answer for it. Other videos have talked about how Hugo is the best antagonist in the series so far, and that analysis was good, so y'all should check out that video too. We pretty much talked about the same topic, but I mean, who can't? Hugo is such an interesting character. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about Hugo and what he seriously brought to the table for this story, because I think he was a perfectly timed character. Leave your thoughts on his character. Is Hugo right? Is Ego right? What do you think Isagi will do to overcome it? If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching as always. YouTube really thinks you'd like this video right here, so be sure to check that one out too. I appreciate y'all so much, and I'll see y'all in the next one.